WMEL.
Lilly and McDermott, weekdays at noon on AM 1510, FM 99.9, 94.7, and 100.7. The views expressed on the following program are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and are not necessarily those of WMEL staff, management, or advertisers.
This is Joe Steckler, folks, your host for Helping Seniors, radio arm of helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. That's our website, helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. I highly recommend that you write that website down, take a look at it sometime, take a look at all the stuff that's on there. It can keep you occupied for a long time if you want to sit there and look at it. I think it's pretty good, of course. I'm on there a lot, so I have a feeling it's pretty good. Carrie is sitting across from me laughing silently. But, folks, you ought to be with us here in the studio today. There's a lot. I came in and I said a lot of air in the studio, but there's quite a crowd in the studio today. We've got, of course, there's me. There's our panelist today, Trey Boyer, and Trey is a motivational speaker, and we're going to talk about that because it's something we have never talked about. Got Kerry Fink. Kerry is nodding his head, not shaking, he's nodding, and he's able to do that a lot easier, folks, because Tammy must have cut his hair again, and he looks more human. He's got that human look to him. He's not that wild, on the stage TV evangelist preacher look. He looks great. And of course, Carol Wheatley is sitting there laughing at him too. And Carol's going to talk a little bit about the Space Coast Prayer Breakfast. But I want to remind everybody that the purpose of Helping Seniors is to inform, educate, and connect seniors and those who care for seniors to resources that can help frail elderly, people that have domestic problems, people that simply need help of some kind, or somebody that just needs somebody to talk to. We do all that, but we try to get you to the source of help that you need. That's one of our jobs. The phone number for our information specialist, Kay Kaiser, is area code 321-473-7770, and I highly urge you to give her a call. It may turn out in talking to her that what you think is a problem is not really a problem at all. It could be something else. But what's more important is that you find an avenue or a venue to help you get to the root cause of your problem. Not always, but many times we can make that happen. We have a whole host of sponsors. Some of our sponsors include the Eye Institute, Dr. Lee Sheldon, Bill Johnson, elder law attorney, this radio station, Ebony News Today, Organized Creative Designs, Cobblestone Realty, Market Street Memory Care, and one of our newest sponsors is Pit Crew Roofing, and I like that because I was particularly impressed with the gentleman that came out to be on the TV show from Pit Crew Roofing, because he did an excellent job of explaining some of the preventive things that you can do in taking care of a roof, so that you don't get in a position when you're older and you don't have the money set aside to fix a roof. And then we found through Barbara McIntyre, the reverse mortgage specialist, a lot of people have equity on their home, and they want to save that money for their children, but it's not right for you to be willing to live in a leaky house while your children can get an extra $10,000. It doesn't make good sense to me. I think that you should take care of yourself first, as you're there longer to be there for your children. But that's enough for me talking today. But let's just get to our speaker, Trey. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Carol Wheatley. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Joe.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you, because we'll let you talk about, we're going to ask you to talk about the Space Coast Prayer Breakfast, because I think that's something that's very important. But our primary guest today, folks, is Trey Boyer, and Trey is a motivational speaker. And I asked Trey some of his background, and I'm going to ask him just to give you a quick overview of his background, because I kind of figured I didn't get a chance to completely read his book. I glanced at it through almost 35 of the chapters, and I kind of figured his background was a little bit what he told me before the show. Welcome, Trey.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here today.
It's quite welcome. I'm glad to have you, Trey. Tell us, our listening audience, just a little bit about your background, how you got started in motivational speaking, because I think it's important.
My career actually began back in the 1980s. I was a world champion bodybuilder. It was during that time that I really began to design my own formula, my own philosophy, and how I could perceive people to gain a complete understanding, both mentally, physically, spiritually, a complete holistic program that others could follow. Once I graduated from college, I actually opened a state-of-the-art fitness center. And it was at that time I was able to begin to implement that program and begin to see fabulous results with other people. Upon really reaching out to other people, I began to get a lot of great feedback from them. And I had numerous people asking if I would please write a book in order to document all the things that I was teaching to them. So one thing led to another. My first book was published 10 years ago called What Are You Waiting For? And during that time, I wanted to reach out to an even wider audience, and that's when I began to do the inspirational, motivational speaking in order to really connect and reach out and personally touch people's lives through the philosophy that I had designed that went and coincided along with that book. So that's how it got started.
When you started thinking about an audience, we'll see that many people think about youngsters and they think about elderly, frail elderly, but when you wrote your book or when you started doing your talks, did you have any particular audience in mind or age range of a listening audience or a reading audience?
That's a great question, and I get asked that often. My original intent was to reach as many people as possible, whether they be a teenager through the senior age demographic. But as it turned out, I began to attract a larger and larger audience from the senior population simply because they wanted a higher quality of life. They wanted the best information possible in terms of how they could continue to live out the remainder of their life with great amounts of energy, great health, and the philosophy that I teach was allowing them to achieve just that.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because based on what you've said and what I read in the book, and then in talking to you before the show, our philosophies are quite similar. I feel the same way because I've always felt if a person took care of themselves first, that they were going to be in a better position to take care of other people and help other people.
Absolutely.
And if you took better care of yourself physically, then you more than likely were not going to experience a lot of physical problems. And that can change with everybody, but no one is a given situation. You can change things. And I can remember years ago there was you remember the Charles Atlas ads on the back of comic books?
I sure do.
Charles Atlas, folks, was a guy that, you know the story?
No, go ahead.
Okay, Charles Atlas was a guy that he was older, as I remember, when he started the business of bodybuilding, and his bodybuilding techniques were more like using his own muscles against the muscles, and it was more like tension and pressure. What happened at that time, I was a 210-pound 12-year-old, and I wore a size 44 suit. And I needed to do something because my family owned a restaurant. And my idea of a piece of pie was a piece of pie with about 6 or 7 scoops of ice cream around it. And my mother said I could eat the profits off of a 5-gallon container of ice cream. So that kind of necessarily led me to be pretty chunky. And I knew I had to do something. So I started this Charles Atlas program, and I even Mother and Dad would wonder what that creaking noise was. It was me using a roller pin on my sides and my rear end to roll the weight off. But I figured out you can do anything if you make up your mind you want to do it. You can do almost anything you want to do if you can get yourself in the right frame of mind.
I agree.
That sort of is, that thinking about that gave me more of a challenge today for the show today, Trey, to get you to talk about how do you tailor your talks to your different audiences?
That's something that anytime that you walk into a room, you immediately begin to connect with people in terms of eye contact, etc. And I can look at a wide variety of people in an audience, but typically you're going to have the demographics where, for example, if it's, say, between the age of 35 and 55, I will begin to tailor that message towards people who have a very hectic, a very busy lifestyle, but both with family, professionally, etc. And it's typically during that time that you're the busiest in your life is when the priority of taking care of yourself begins to take a back seat. That's when I begin to step up and tell them, look, you cannot be of benefit to other people, your family, your coworkers, etc., unless you are at your ultimate full potential. So it's then that I begin to go through systematically and point out to them, here's a daily routine that you can follow. Here are the things that you have to continue to keep as a top priority in your life. If you ever lose sight of that, then your personal skills begin to diminish, and your ability to reach out and help other people will also begin to deteriorate. So something I continue to preach to everybody, but you have to make it a priority each and every day to start off by taking care of yourself, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I give a very systematic approach and program to how you can accomplish that.
Where does God fit in all this?
That's something that has been at the forefront of my philosophy. I've had people ask me, in your book, Trey, it appears as if you have a Christian background. There's a Christian influence that really percolates through every page. And when asked that question, I'm not ashamed at all to tell them I've been a born-again Christian my entire life, from the time I was just a young person. And my guidance in helping other people is I will simply tell them God has a purpose for everybody's life. Once He puts you, places you on the right course, it's then up to you to make sure that you're working to your full potential in order to actualize just how far you can go in your life.
Thinking along that line, I've often heard it said, and we know that when you see the casket roll down the aisle of the church with the feet pointed one way and then goes out of the church with the feet pointed the other way, we know that we've experienced a coming and a going, but we've also experienced something else. Everything that's in that casket stays here. Everything. It stays on this earth. It doesn't go anyplace, except one thing. There's one thing that's in that casket that's no longer in there, that by the time it gets to the church, it's already gone someplace else. And if you do your work the right way, it goes to where God is. And I felt, and that goes along with the thought that while you may not take physical things with you, you can take the good work that you do with you, because that's what God expects of you. God
Absolutely.
expects you to do good work throughout your life. That's what He put it here for.
I've got an interesting quote for you. I will be judged by when you were hungry, I gave you something to eat. When you were naked, I clothed you. When you were homeless, I took you in. I alone cannot change the world, but I can create many ripples across the water. So I tell people, never diminish or minimize the effect that you have on this earth. Whether you're aware or unaware, you're having a great impact in a lot of people's lives.
Carol, you have a ministry yourself. You started. You're listening to Trey talk. You haven't said a word. Of course, we haven't let you say anything yet. But now, what Trey and I are talking about, how does that fit in with your chaplaincy ministry?
It fits in great, because one of the things that I have discovered. And I know you all can't see all my white hair, but I fall well into the category of senior citizen. And a lot of my peers simply lose sight of the fact that they have a future and that God still wants to use them. And when an individual loses the ability to think in a forward manner, they've lost everything. And when you hear Trey, and I've had the distinct pleasure of listening to him and being through one of his training courses. It's a motivational, but it's more intrinsic than just external motivation. It doesn't make me just want to go out and do something better. It makes me want to look inside of myself and find out what is it that God really has for me. So from that perspective, the alignment of the Word of God with the motivation to create goals and to keep forward looking no matter how old you are is very critical, especially today with the numbers of senior citizens that are just growing exponentially.
Right. I think it's always interesting to think about. I've met a number of people that claim they're atheists in their life, and it's interesting that when the self-announced atheist is having a problem, they ask you to say a prayer for him. And, I always go back to the first time I talked to a group of people that had Alzheimer's or some type of a dementia problem. I always told people that you never know what's behind the mask of a face. And if you're talking to a person, you see what the outward appearance is to you. You don't know what that person is thinking about what you're saying or how you're expressing yourself. So I've always advised caution and care when you're talking to a group of people that you're not certain of how with it they really are. The point is, never underestimate who you're talking to or who you're listening to or who you're trying to help. There are just so many ways we can do. Carrie, I'd like to get you to say something before we take our first part of the break. What question would you have for Trey?
Well, it's probably a statement followed by a question, but I love the title of the book, What Are You Waiting For? And we had this conversation as Trey was busy rewriting and he was working on bringing the 2017 edition of this book out. And I said, it's really, to me, you're asking a question, but you're also giving a motivational answer the same time you're saying the title. What are you waiting for? And so the question that I would ask Trey is, particularly if you're talking to somebody who says, look, I've lived most of my life, I'm 70, I'm 80, I'm 85, what are you waiting for? And somebody might come up with a wrong answer or something. But how do you encourage somebody to make the most of every day through that philosophy?
Well, I've had the opportunity to meet many people within that age demographic. And I have to tell you, some of the most interesting people that I've ever had the opportunity and blessing to meet have, according to a lot of people, have probably lived most of their life. And I just find them to be full of knowledge, full of wisdom. I probably learned as much from them as they learned from me. And my encouragement to them is life and death are quite a paradox. From the time that we're born, we don't know the how or the when, but we know it's going to happen. And so none of us can accurately predict when that day will be. And I think it's imperative that we live each day to its fullest. We impact as many people's lives as we can. And in the process of doing that, I say we want to go out on a road of glory. I could not think of a better way to do that than to focus on yourself each and every day and just look at the many opportunities that you've been given to reach out and connect with other people.
Yeah, and even beyond that aspect of it, I was thinking, like, when you go to somebody, because you wrote the book in two parts. The first part has to do with sort of getting your head right about how you think about things, and the second part is an encouragement maybe of how you get better in shape, how to eat well, and things like that. But on that first part, I had a pastor friend of ours say, a lot of times people say about a situation, it's like staring at a wall. And the first step in adjusting to a situation, if that wall is your problem, the first situation doesn't involve any kind of a physical move. It just simply involves turning around and facing the other direction so that you're seeing possibilities instead of the problems that you're confronting. And that's what I picked up, because the way your book is written, you've got these chapters, and each chapter, they're very short, very easy to read through, and you can just pick up the book, put it back down, read the next one, and go for day by day. It's almost like it's written devotional style. But it's interesting that each one, basically, you're giving a message for the person to be thinking about how to use their mind. I was going to ask you to comment about that.
Well, in my business, what I've done for several decades, I would work people in helping them attain better physical condition. And what I found out rather quickly was the fact that I was counseling them as much as I was actually working with them physically. I was giving them positive affirmations to think about each day. I was continuing to construct and design a mental program that they could continue to follow, where I found that every single day I was having to revisit the same principles. And that's why I wanted to design a book that you could feel accomplished each and every day. You could read a chapter in 4 to 5 minutes. You could take away from that something positive that you could focus on throughout the day. I began to see a remarkable change from people as soon as they began to read that book. They said, I wanted to read one chapter, but I couldn't put the book down. It made me feel so good inside that I was really focused on positive things, and once they began to experience that, I began to see a real difference in them from the perspective they were happy, they were more outgoing, they were beginning to engage in the game of life again, and that to me is what's most important. Not to just teach people how to be fit for the day, but how to live out the remainder of their life with joy and happiness.
Why don't you mention your 3 B's before we take the break, so people could think about the 3 B's during the break?
That's something that when I was writing the book, I wanted to really focus on. If you could think of a motto every day, what would it be? And I just thought, the most interesting thing that you can ever do is to continue to remind yourself what's the most important, to be happy, to be specific in what you're wanting to accomplish every day, and be the best you can each and every day. We never know when that last day will be, which makes it even more important to live each day to its fullest.
What are those other 2, though? Be satisfied?
I was seeing if you read the book. Go ahead.
No, I can't remember. It'd be your best, be satisfied, and what's the other one?
Be everything you can to everybody else.
Okay, all right. Folks, we're going to take a mid-show break. I knew I'd get myself in trouble one way or the other, but stay with us. We're going to have some more of that, and we might have some after in the second part of the show, but there's still a lot we want to talk about. Stay with us.
WMEL.
Ed Dean, weekdays 5 to 7 p.m. on FM 99.9, 94.7, and 100.7.
This is Joe Steckler, folks, back live for the second half of this edition of Helping Seniors. Our show is intended to develop information, education, and help you connect with resources so that you can help seniors. That's the purpose of our organization. We're not competing with anybody. We're trying to complete the care equation. The phone number to call to get to our specialist is 473-7770, or you can call the radio station, and they'll give you the same number to call. But some of our other sponsors include Senior Scene Magazine. Folks, that's a magazine I highly recommend you read, because John Fredrickson does a super great job with the magazine. We have an 8-page newsletter in there, and I looked this morning, we got another person wants the newsletter sent to them electronically. We now are up to about 920-something people that have subscribed to the electronic newsletter. And when you're not in the nonprofit business, or you're not in the business of trying to build up readerships and memberships, you don't understand the significance of those numbers. And you might say, well, 900 is not very many. But let me tell you, in the world of the nonprofit business and trying to raise funding and getting a good donor base, the numbers 900 or 4,000 on a mailing list that you can count on to help you are extremely important numbers. So John has done a fantastic thing with Senior Scene Magazine. So we're very, very appreciative of what he's done to help us. But we've got other programs like Seniors Helping Seniors, Barbara McIntyre, Canadian Meds of Melbourne, Ear Care, Vitas Hospice, the Eye Institute, the and now we've got a column in a new magazine called the Space Coast Daily Online Newspaper, and we're meeting next week with Jeff Keel, who is the publisher of Florida Today, and I hope that we can get back in Florida Today because there's just really no end of information that needs to be made available for seniors. I always also have learned in doing a radio show that for something you really want to make sure you tell somebody, you do it right before you get near the end of the show, because you get near the end of the show, you don't have enough time to do it. But I want to make sure people understand that I've got a column coming out next week or the week after next in Hometown News, and it'll be in all of our publications, but it deals with our newest fundraiser. And the reason I want to talk about just a second on the show today is that it's a 1951 Ford Victoria 3-speed transmission hot rod. It is the car has been completely restored except for under the hood. It's original with the original 8-valve engine sitting there underneath that hood, and the trunk is original. It's got the original shop manual in the trunk, but the car is a black matte finished. And it's got highly glossed gold top on it, and the interior is black with leather with gold inserts. It's a gold dashboard. It's got spotlights on it, chrome all over the thing, and it is a true hot rod. And I went down to A.J. Hires with the intent of trying to buy a car that we could sell raffle tickets on. And A.J. said, "Joe, you're not going to sell tickets on something like that. What you need is a hot rod." I said, "AJ can't afford that. We just can't do it." He said, "There's a car sitting over there." And I said, "We cannot afford that car." He said, "Yes, you can, because it's yours. I'm giving it to you." He said, "I want to help you with this new program you started." So, folks, AJ simply gave it to us at zero cost. And he said, because I'm helping the sheriff, I'm helping St. Jude's, he says, I can't do as much transporting of the car for you as I used to do. But he said, we'll still help. And folks, I really didn't know what to say because, it seems to me like what Trey is talking about in his book, and we're talking about motivational speaking, we're talking about getting people to help. There's always somebody that will help you if you just know where to go to find the help that you need. And it seemed to me, Trey, that in thinking about what AJ does, the way you've structured your book, and in talking today, that a motivational speaker can develop a talk, and really what it is a plan of attack. It's how am I going to attack this subject to get to the end purpose I need to get to in the right way?
Absolutely.
Can you expand on that?
I can. I believe that everybody has a platform, and it is incumbent and imperative on all of us to use that platform to the best of our ability. It just so happens that I figured out very early in my career that I had a skill set and certain gifts that allowed me to really connect with other people. And it taught me to be a very good listener, to be very empathetic towards what they were wanting to achieve in their life. And I found that through that process that I could actually design a complete system where they could follow a step-by-step instructional manual, if you will, which is essentially what my book evolved into. And it was through that you're able to start not only benefiting one life at a time, but every time that you take somebody who's been going through a difficult time, they've been lonely, they've been going through some really dark times, when you can shine a light into their life and allow them to come out of that shell, you begin to see how many lives they affect. And when you begin to see how much a single effort is multiplied over and over repeatedly, it's an amazing thing to see. And that's what really motivates and encourages me to reach out to one person at a time, to really personalize, to individualize my talks to where I know that I'm connecting with people on a one-on-one basis.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you to reflect on what I'm going to talk about right now. because I think you're going to see where I'm headed with this thing. As I went into, as I began to realize I didn't need all the extra weight I was carrying, I started lifting weights, and I started trying to tone my body and trying to take care of myself better. I started going to the gyms. I worked out with a guy that was Mr. Illinois in 1949. And he didn't have the bulk of current bodybuilders. He had long, sinewy muscles. And he was Mr. Illinois. And he was one of the nicest people I've ever met, and I trained with him. I've also learned through the years that of all the people I've ever encountered in a gymnasium, everybody, I cannot remember a time that I've met a show-off or a person that didn't care or a person that didn't offer to help or in some way sense that you might have needed help with a weight or something. What I'm saying is, when you get into certain types of athletic type things, the people there seem to care more. It's just like driving down a road. If you stop and there's an accident, the most likely person you're going to find there at the accident is some redneck farmer. It's driven down the road, or some young kid that doesn't appear to have any care in the world. They're going to be the first to stop to try to help. And it's the same thing. It seems to me like after reading your book, you've experienced some of the same thing I have. If you ever am working out with people and gyms and things like that, have you ever encountered an experience that would cause you to think otherwise about them being good people?
In terms of the people that I've worked with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to have met a lot of amazing people. I mean, all the way from doctors to attorneys to great retired people that have had a fabulous life. And I really feel like God somehow sends those people to me.
Well, that's my point. That's my point, Trey.
I mean, it is. I don't think anything happens by chance. I can't tell you how many phone calls that I've received over my career. People who have heard about the program that I instruct. I got a phone call from a lady one day, and she said, Trey, I've heard about your program. She said, my boss is one of the #1 litigating attorneys in the country. She said, but he's in the hospital right now. And I asked what he'd been hospitalized for. She said, he's suffering from severe depression and anxiety. I said, I'd love to meet with him. And I've shared the story a few times with people, but I met with him. We actually became very good friends, and about 3 years after we'd been working together, he grabbed me by the arm one day and said, Trey, I just need to thank you for something. I said, what's that? He said, thank you for saving my life. It's more than just reaching out and touching somebody and say, look, I can show you something. You are making an indelible impression in their life, not just to give them life for today, but you are changing a life for the better. I've had people that have been fighting cancer, heart disease, diabetes, etc., just numerous stories over and over again, and I feel very blessed to have been in the position and given the opportunity to where I can help people in that manner.
I guess we never know how much we really affect somebody's life unless somebody says something to us about it. So I've always encouraged people that I've talked to that if they had a problem and they felt they got helped by somebody, I always encouraged them to go to that person and say thank you.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like Lazarus and the lepers and everybody forgetting to thank our Lord. So there are just so many things that we don't think about as we live our life that if we did think about them, we, and each in our own turn, might be a better person.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were asking me what the 3 B's were, and that's actually in chapter 1 of my book, which is one of my favorite chapters. And one of the subtopics within that chapter is be the first one. And I've been asked, how did you come up with that concept? And I give an example for you're in the grocery store, and you can tell you're going through the Walmart checkout line. This lady looks like, she has just had the most horrible day of her life. Imagine that working at Walmart all day. And you compliment her on, you're just doing a wonderful job. You immediately see that person who just looks beaten and downtrodden and just finished. You immediately see a smile. You see their eyes come back to life. Oh, thank you. You immediately get into a conversation. It doesn't take much to lift somebody up and to really make a positive impact in their life. So, yeah, I encourage everybody, be the first one to offer a compliment and give credit where credit's due.
Yep. Gary?
No, I was going to say one of the things about the book that I think is valuable in terms of just a reading and a kind of a self-improvement experience. And I noticed you talk about this because I've seen Trey in action. He's a wonderful speaker, and one of the things he talks about, and it was funny because it actually caused our former congressman to start laughing. He goes, "I'm going to remember that and explain it to my son." But he starts talking about this whole mental approach that you get to things, and it was one of the surprise points. In I said, "I don't know. I'll leave it to you if you want to give it away, Trey." But you said one of the first things, the lessons in life that you had, and it really is sort of sets the agenda for everything that follows.
Ironically enough, the one thing that people always come away from my presentations with is an analogy I give, and it's called making your bed. And people are like, making your bed? Are you kidding? I'm like, no. I said, but if you think about it, it's all about the details, isn't it? I mean, anything worth significance in your life is going to require that you focus on details and being precise. I go on to say that to develop excellence in big things, you have to develop great habits in small matters, because excellence is an attitude, it's not an exception. The second thing you look at is it's all about momentum. And what better way to face the day than the first thing that you're faced with, making your bed. Because you have to light that fire of intensity and passion each and every day. And the first sign of decay in your life will be when you begin to get satisfied and you're no longer trying. The third one is to feel satisfied. Confidence is how the battle is won. So regardless of how insignificant or small something may seem, you're developing an attitude of positivity. And then the fourth is even if you've had a horrible, bad, terrible day, at least when you get home, your bed's going to be made. All right, so start off each day by making your bed.
But you still have to mess it up to get in bed.
True. I tell people, though, you don't know what's going to happen in the day until you start it off right. So get it going the right way.
Well, years ago, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, every night I go to bed, I couldn't stand the sheets being around my feet. So I'd tear the covers off, and I would remake the bed, pull it tight, get back in bed. And my mother said to me, she said, "Why do you do that?" I said, "Mom, I can't stand those things being around my feet." And so I came home from the Navy one time, and I must have been in my early 20s. My mother said to me, she said, "Joe, I wish I'd have listened to you." I said, "What do you mean, Mom?" She said, "If I'd have listened to you, we'd be multimillionaires now." I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, what you were talking about back in the 30s was form-fitted sheets." And she said, "I'm an excellent seamstress." She said, "I just didn't realize what you were talking about."
So the lesson there is always listen to Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other part of that lesson is you never know what can happen until you try to see what needs to be done. You have to have a plan. And one of the things that you had asked me and we were going to talk about was, you've been given a pretty wonderful platform in your book and your ability to write a book, the experiences that you've had with people. But how do you, Trey Boyer, plan to use that platform for the rest of your life? How old are you now, about 47?
You're good. 48.
Pretty close.
You're real
Pretty
good.
close.
And we did not rehearse that either.
No, we didn't.
So
We really didn't.
give you props. The way that I see my career developing, God willing, and blessed in it, is I would love to reach. I've reached thousands of people. I would love to reach hundreds of thousands of people, and I don't want to put a ceiling on that. What I'm doing is not geographically defined. It knows no boundaries. It has no ceiling. So I would love to continue to push that just as far as I can. And when I tell people, it's all about self-improvement. I'm probably the cornerstone of that because I want to see just how far I'm able to push my ability, and with those abilities, how much I can use that to impact other people in a positive way. So I'm not putting any restrictions on that, but to answer your question, I would like to reach as many people as possible.
Don't change that philosophy, Trey, because I'll tell you, from the difference between a 48 and an 83-year-old person is that that 48 to 58 to 68 to 88, it's pretty near 30 years they got on you, but not quite. But I can think of so many things that I still would like to do if God gives me the time to do them. And you can always say a prayer every night that God give you the strength to do what needs to be done, and God give you the time to do what He has given you, for you to use the abilities that He has given you. But with that thought, Carol, I would like for you just to tell the people about the Space Coast Prayer Breakfast. Just don't forget that. Just mention it real quick so people
I
know
will.
about
I
that.
would just like to take this time to thank you for allowing me to come in and invite your listeners to attend the Space Coast Prayer Breakfast. We're a week away. You can get your tickets online at spacecoastprayerbreakfast.org, and it's going to be an absolutely outstanding event this year. It's our 5th year. Sheriff Wayne Ivey's our keynote speaker. Dr. Dave Robinson is coming in from Chicago to teach us about transforming your city. And then we're also having a video message from our Congressman Posey, who is also our honorary chairman. But we've expanded it this year into a 4-day event. And the kickoff, of course, is the Space Coast Prayer Breakfast on Thursday morning at 7:30 at the Rialto Hilton in Melbourne. And we're following that up with a 3-2-1 launch concert, which is a free concert. It's a Christian rock band, local Christian rock band, filming their video for national release on Friday night. And then on Saturday afternoon, it's Dr. Dave Robinson with Transforming Your City. And what we're doing is we're bringing in a lot of the Christian leaders from our community, people who are in government, in education, and in business, as well as a few pastors, to let people know the importance of reaching your community through marketplace ministry. Okay. And then we follow that up with Celebration Sunday, where everybody goes back and shares what they've learned during the weekend. So we would just like to encourage you to come out and be part of this amazing prayer event. Prayer changes things, and we see Brevard County changing.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. And folks, if you got a question, you can call Carol. What phone number can contact you on, Carol?
They can call me at 321-626-4483. Or the best way to get a hold of me is spacecoastprayerbreakfast.org.
Okay. All right. Okay, back to you, Trey. We were talking about, let's just talk just a second. We're thinking about the platform you've been given, but where do you see the world of motivational speaking going when we think about the numbers of seniors that we're developing in the United States? We've got so many older people, and I think it's by 20, I forget, it was 20-something that they're estimating that 50% of the population will be a senior citizen. I can see where motivational speaking, used the right way, could provide tremendous incentive for seniors to remain young for longer than they're doing. That make sense?
Completely. When I first began to work with seniors, that was what I would refer to as really an untapped market. Meaning that people didn't seem interested in reaching out to that particular segment. And I've always been what I would refer to as a people person. I like to get to know people. I like to get to know where you came from, what you're about, what your interests and values are. And I began to really connect with that particular segment. So to answer your question, in terms of motivational speaking, I'm typically referred to as coach. And again, that's a nickname that I probably is well earned and deserved, but everywhere I've ever been, that's a nickname that's followed me, people that have never even met me before. And so taking that along with me, I can see that this has the real potential and opportunity to be a blessing to them, to hear someone speak directly to them that cares about them, that sees a lot of value and worth in them as a person. But I see that it's really a market that for me personally, I really thoroughly enjoy working with, and I probably get as much from it as they do. So really enjoy working with that particular segment.
Do you work with other churches in the area?
Actually, I'm in a resort community called the Great Outdoors in Titusville, Florida.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful church. Matter of fact, I actually work with the pastor there, and have really become involved in the church. Wonderful church. Matter of fact, you would never think in a resort community that a church would continue to grow. For the last 2 years now, they've had to have 2 church services every Sunday morning. So it's a church that is really being blessed right now, really speaking the Word of God and really having an impact.
Okay. If people wanted to get a hold of you, Trey, how would they do that?
The best way is to email me, and I'm going to say this slow so you can write it down. It is Boyer, Boyer, at yahoo.com. I'll repeat that, Boyer, Boyer, at yahoo.com.
Folks, in thinking about what Trey just gave you, he's, I'm sure that what we've talked about has triggered some thoughts for all of us today. But I'll thank you, Carrie, for being here today. And we won't let you speak a little bit, but that's okay. Carol, you got more time than he did. But I want to thank you for being here because people knowing about Space Coast Prayer Breakfast, there was something that was said a long time ago about bringing Russia to the conversion process will require prayer, and it started out in the 1910 or 1920s. But having said that, Trey, I want to thank you for being here today, and I hope people have enjoyed listening to you.
Thanks for having me.
You're quite welcome, and thank you, listeners, for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.